Warmest greetings to everybody that is gathered. Um, I'm overwhelmed, overcome, and humbled. I guess the first thing that I would say is that this American political system was never designed to serve people like me. But because of the Green Party and all of these efforts over so many years to try to figure out a way to make these processes open, transparent, elastic, and service-oriented, representative of the people, I'm honored to accept your nomination to stand shoulder to shoulder with Dr. Jill Stein and fight for the American people. Um, Freedom has more genealogies than the story has revealed. The Constitution's a profound document, but it was shaped by the Iroquois Federation. Our notions of freedom were shaped by runaway slaves, by Haitian revolutionaries. Our railways were laid by Asian laborers. This is a nation that we have all shed tears for. We have had our blood shed, and we are going to fight for it. We are going to pull it back from the duopoly, and we are going to put it back in service of the American people. I want to begin with a personal story because y'all in the Green Party might just be getting to know me, but I've known about the Green Party my whole life because my best friend, Sean Young, is the son of Annie Young. And we grew up two kids with single moms on the south side of Minneapolis. And Annie Young was my godmother. She was like the second mother. She was my backup mom. And she was the first Green Party elected official in the state of Minnesota. And I learned lots of things from Annie Young. In addition to the fact that she was just a warm-hearted person, she was a public servant. She showed me that the Green Party is not filled with politicians. The Green Party is filled with public servants, people that are willing to do the work for the people rather than for the glorification of their own massive egos and the fortification of their own massive pocketbooks. What I learned in little two-bedroom apartment was how you put government resources in the service of the people and make America live up to its promises, one block at a time, one community at a time. So those were my teenage years, and there is now a meadow um, next to the Mississippi River where Annie Young's ashes sit overlooking it. It is Annie Young Meadow. And I make a pilgrimage to visit my mother, my second mother, every time I'm back in my hometown. And yes, Minnesota Greens, we are taking Minnesota. Tim Walz can bring the fight to me in my neighborhood if he wants to. I know those neighborhoods. Um, I took those lessons to my PhD research in West Africa. And the way that I would summarize to be brief and key in this space is that what I studied in my PhD research was the West African Sufi tradition of resistance to imperialism, slavery, white supremacy, capitalism, and imperialist domination. That's what I studied. Sufism. You guys have probably heard of Rumi, but you haven't heard of perhaps the greatest Sufi poet, the greatest poet of love ever to write love letters in the Arabic language. And he was a West African scholar named Ahmadou Bamba, born 1855, deceased 1927, wrote 200 books in the Arabic language, some of them collections of as many as 200 poems, some of those poems as many as 5,000 lines of verse. Before I moved to Minneapolis, I grew up in DC. And when I would have my face in a book as a Black kid in DC, people would accuse me of acting white because our histories had been ripped from us. And I didn't know that there were jet Black African scholars that would write hundreds of books in their third language, by the way, when they were writing. And then I learned that Ahmadou Bamba stood up to imperialism and was sent into exile for 7 years, 9 months, lived 25 years under house arrest, and still built a movement that now numbers 6 million people that stood up in the face of French oppression, now stands up to imperialism. These are the people that taught me my lessons when I returned to the motherland, and I brought those lessons back here. Ahmadou Bamba was also a philosopher of nonviolence, and you will have heard lots of lies about Islam. but there is a pacifistic, non-violent, and still militant tradition of African Islamic Sufi resistance. And these were my teachers. They told me that the true scholar spills sweat, not blood. And so then I learned service all over again. And the things that Annie Young taught me and Sean around her table came back to me in the Wolof language, my third language, as it happened to be. And they talked about a sacred trust that human beings have. And this runs across our traditions of faith and of conscience. And we are seeing a war on the freedom of religion, the freedom to practice our beliefs or our disbeliefs as we please. We are seeing a white Christian nationalist takeover of this country, but that is not what American democracy is supposed to be about. I, a Black Muslim, Jill Stein, a white Jew, we are here to stand for religious freedom and the freedom of your religion. In my faith, there's no compulsion in religion. Believe or disbelieve as you please. And America was supposed to stand for that. And now we see it taken over by fascists. So I learned about freedom of conscience, but what I learned about in this tradition was a tradition of stewardship. That authority in these sacred African and indigenous traditions is not about possession of power. It is not about dominion over the earth. It is about khilafa, stewardship. We are here simply to safeguard resources that were here long before we came and will be here long after we are gone. The human being is responsible for safeguarding and healing the land and its inhabitants, for being stewards of the water, for being the stewards of all of the diverse creatures that are upon the land and upon the water, and for maintaining balance in this, our one shared home, planet Earth. I recently read a scientific study that the water in the Earth's oceans are actually older than the sun, that they were present in the cloud of elements that actually came together to form the sun and then the solar system around it. That means that the water that is in our seas, the water that flows through our bodies, is older than the sun itself. We are just stewards of this water. We are just stewards of this light. It will all go back to its source. The Green Party is about stewardship of these sacred trusts over humanity and over everything that humanity has the capacity to impact, either for benefit or for harm. This is what I learned from these very different teachers, an indigenous woman on the south side of Minneapolis and West African teachers, jet black, in Africa. But it was the same lessons because this is universal lessons. I am only a steward of the sacred, timeless waters that flow through my body. And I hope to serve as a steward over this sacred land of Turtle Island, side by side with my sister, Jill Stein. I want only to be a steward for the trust that you all have put in me and in us to end this genocidal war, to demilitarize this brutal empire, to get a fascist police state off the necks of the people, to return power to the people, to return prosperity to the people, to return equality to the people, to return dignity to the people. And there is one other sacred, timeless truth which is shared across all of our faiths and philosophies. And that is that all empires fall. We will dismantle this empire and put the resources of this beautiful land back to work for the American people. And when we have done that, the world will be a more peaceful, much safer place of abundance and goodness, because I am a fundamental believer in the goodness of humanity. But only when the leadership, those that hold that sacred trust of authority, are faithful stewards. I'm intensely and deeply grateful that you have placed this trust in me, and you will find, God willing, me a soldier in this affair. Thank you.